So yeah, Dan asked me to give an update on what we've been doing with the Inflation Reduction Act resources that we received at NOAA that are directed toward forward-looking projections. And we have some funding that's already been moved out onto projects, and we have additional funding that is on its way out, hopefully soon this fiscal year in the second quarter. And I wanted to just give a quick update on what we've been funding, and it's highly relevant to our ASCE work at NOAA. So first of all, just setting a bit of a framework from the NOAA side, there are a wide array of timescales on which various customers and members of the public have information needs looking into the future. So anything from weather timescales to seasonal timescales, all the way out to these longer term climate change timescales on multi-decadal periods. And at NOAA, we have a very well-known weather capability through the Weather Service for forecasts that are issued regularly and routinely and are highly reliable up until about 7 days in the future, with that boundary constantly being pushed forward with scientific innovation. We have a seasonal prediction capability as well, also in the Weather Service. And then a few years ago, there was an additional capability added to target the week 3 to 6 timescale. This is a unique scientific and forecasting problem from weather prediction or seasonal prediction, so it required its own investment in both what the operational footprint would look like, as well as the science needed to provide reliable information on that timescale. So this is a good example of NOAA filling a gap through science and operational development in recent years. What we don't have, though, is something that's highly organized and consistent, transparent, reliable at these much longer timescales. We have a lot of scientists and capabilities, data, model projections in NOAA that we do provide to the public that satisfy some of the information needs in the public. But as we discovered through this growing relationship with ASCE, we were lacking in a very clear approach to how to provide information on these timescales, how to do it in a focused and consistent way, and how to not just do it as a one-off, but actually do this for the many other customers who are consistently coming to our agency asking for this kind of information. So the idea here that motivated the Inflation Reduction Act investments that we've made was to create, and this is Joe Pica's wording, I really like this wording, a routine, regularly scheduled product and service update environment using consistent, transparent data and methods on these timescales. This is going to look different than our weather forecasting, seasonal forecasting, sub-seasonal capabilities, but NOAA's knowledge of how to provide service and product delivery is really key to being able to develop something like this in the agency. So this is a framework from the IPCC report that I've been referring to a lot recently because I think it identifies the gap that we have as an agency and really across the federal government. There are two dimensions on this graphic. The vertical dimension is moving from information that's very climate centric, so just temperature, precipitation fields, down to things that are more integrated. So you could think of this as adaptation information or highly things like that. And then in terms of the specificity of the information, anything from generic information, so something that is perhaps developed in the agency, a tool, a website, and then is made available to the public, and that's kind of it. There's no customer support. There's no customization with that. The tool is going to be useful, but it's not going to be amenable to tailoring for particular stakeholder demands, to customized. So in this quadrant, we have, for example, the Climate Explorer, which is a really nice tool that you can put your zip code or county in, and you can get projection information for that county. You can view observational trends from that county. This is great for folks trying to explore the context of climate change in their location, but it's probably not fit for purpose for planning, for example, for ASCE needs. Down here, this is another tool that NOAA has developed through climate.gov called the Climate Resilience Toolkit. It takes climate information and then moves it into more of a resilience framework, showing examples of adaptation that has been done in various parts of the country to address particular climate risks. And so this is still generic, but it's more integrated in that it can be used as a guidebook for other similar individuals and institutions that need to make decisions in a changed climate framework. This upper right-hand quadrant, though, I think is more where we are with the ASCE relationship. And There are methods to provide this information now, but they're generally fairly ad hoc methods. It's kind of individually funded projects from programs like the one that I manage, the Modeling, Analysis, Predictions, and Projections program, and other agencies offer individual interactions. So I know from talking to many of you, you've been able to find, another individual at your university or at another federal institution. We have examples like Ken Kunkel has already done some work for ASCE at NOAA. That's not funded work. That's work that, Ken's leveraging his time and funding from other projects to do that. And person down the hall relationships. So at a regional level, especially, there will be particular relationships formed between, for example, adaptation professionals and climate projection or climate scientist specialists. And they will take a customized or unique approach to providing that information. So what we're trying to do here is to really satisfy this information need more robustly in this quadrant and to do it in a consistent and reproducible manner for multiple customers at both the national and regional scale. So that's the motivation behind this investment. So getting to the Inflation Reduction Act, there are two major buckets of investments that we've made, and I want to walk you through what the purpose of those investments are. And they're both directed at the end towards producing this hopefully durable capability at NOAA to provide multi-decadal projection information to customers like ASCE. So the first is a scientific investment. Of course, as we all know, projection information has a wide range of uncertainty that comes from many sources. Some of that is our limited, in some cases, scientific understanding of a particular problem or the way in which climate change is affecting that problem. Scientific uncertainty can also include model issues. So the way that models capture particular processes towards producing reliable projections. Gaps in our observational knowledge or just our theoretical knowledge of what's going on in the climate system. We have to invest in advancing that scientific knowledge to produce reliable and improvingly reliable information for customers like ASCE. So we've made an investment on the scientific side through these Inflation Reduction Act funds. First of all, evaluating one of NOAA's models that's been built for purpose for multi-decadal projections. That's called the SPEAR model. And then also along a number of different phenomena. So thinking about particular variables, phenomena that drive impacts, and then the impact space as well. So thinking about precipitation, temperature extremes, snowfall, hydrological changes, drought, sea level rise, inland flooding, these various areas that can impact, for example, built infrastructure. And then also focusing on uncertainty and how to tackle uncertainty and provide information to stakeholders that is appropriately quantified in terms of the uncertainty that the scientific community has. So exploring these different aspects. We funded 14 projects under this umbrella, and they total up about just shy of $8 million in total over 3 years of the projects. The next component of this investment is developing this experimental product and service delivery environment to address that multi-decadal projection gap that we have in the mission in our operational or reliable information mission at NOAA. And this has a number of different components. There is an investment in particular to help wire together pieces of NOAA. We have the modeling, the observations, the service delivery expertise, and the scientific expertise distributed throughout the agency to really tackle this problem. But that expertise lies across a number of different line offices, labs, operational centers. And a lot of these folks that I'm talking about here have worked together, but not in an organized fashion towards this goal of trying to provide something that's sustained to the public. So part of this is developing this architecture across the agency. And then we have to bring together the observational and modeling data sets. We have to query those data sets and evaluate the data quality. Working with interagency partners is, of course, very important. We have NCAR, which is NSF and partially DOE funded as part of one of these projects. And then, I know Allison Leidner, we've been talking a bit about NASA involvement. I've been talking with DOE about their involvement as well, and other individuals from the community who have projection information that could be germane to this. And then a key component of this part of the investment is to do this experimental service delivery development in co-partnership and co-production with ASCE. ASCE is actually part of the proposals that we're funding under this particular umbrella. So we're funding 2 projects here. It totals up to $13.6 million over 4 years. About half of that funding is from the Inflation Reduction Act, and the other half is from the MAP program to supplement it so that we could actually fund the totality of the two projects we received, which are highly complementary. And we're waiting for our FY24, which is the current fiscal year, resources from the Inflation Reduction Act to be able to get these projects formally started. And I would love to, invite the teams to come talk to this group once they're up and running, hopefully in the spring. So finally, what these two components are hopefully going to get us to is a concept for how to provide projection services. And we can then have a discussion as an agency about how to sustain that beyond this more experimental timescale. The last thing I wanted to update on is that we have organized together the researchers and other individuals involved with the funded projects into a task force called the Projections Task Force. This is something that my program does whenever we fund a major initiative in a particular area. So we have a drought task force and a climate sensitivity task force, a marine ecosystems task force. And so we're bringing these investigators together to really identify collaborative opportunities across their 14 projects. And then once the two additional more enterprise projects are funded, we'll integrate those individuals as well. These task forces are not highly directed. They're really an organic opportunity for the investigators to work together to solve common issues, to think about how to enhance the profile of their work collectively, to think about whether there are some value-added products that might come out of their work, perhaps like journal articles, in this case, input to ASCE. And we have 4 leads for this projections task force. Most of you will recognize Abby Lyle, who is of the ASCE community, Jane Baldwin, Hiro Murakami, and Kathy Pijan. So initially, this is really just trying to bring the projects together and start talking about some of the scientific concerns and commonly held issues across the projects. But we brought Abby onto the leadership because we really want ultimately the scope and focus of this group to turn towards providing information and thinking about best practices for using climate information for engineering practice. And we're hoping that Abby, who's been really involved in this from the ASCE side, is going to be able to help, arc towards that particular type of outcome for this projections task force. Jane studies tropical cyclones. She's been involved in prior ASCE NOAA workshops and is very interested in this interaction. Hiro is essentially our representative from GFDL, which is the home of one of the projection models that will be key to providing projection services at NOAA. And Kathy is more from the seasonal prediction community, but she has deep experience with setting up new operational systems at NOAA that are derived from research, in particular the North American Multi-Model Ensemble. So we felt that her understanding of that kind of research to operations framework would be really valuable for this effort as well. So Dan, I hope that was a helpful update for the group, and that's all I had to present.
All right, thanks, Dan. I think that's really helpful. We've got time for a couple quick questions for Dan. Anybody? All right, that sounds good. I know that some of this, there's a lot of discussion here, especially around the ASCE 7, Chapter 36 decisions that have to be made. I know that those are kind of interwoven with what you're trying to do with the projections task force. I think Abby's involvement there obviously is going to be really key, but I think this is something that we need to kind of keep track of so that the larger ASCE community understands kind of what's going on. ASCE 7 is a real linchpin, but there are other components here that we have to be thoughtful about. But with that, if nobody else has any questions, I think we're off to a wild 2024, a lot going on. So I look forward to seeing everybody in a month.